Hi everyone, it's really a pleasure and an honor. So let's get started. I'm going to talk today about a new data economy with power to the people. So quick, another show of hands, or a show of hands. How many of you use Gmail? Come on, don't be shy. Great, so looks like the vast majority. Myself too, I use it. I've been using it for more than 10 years. And I was thinking about this a while ago. If I lost my account, if it got shut off, I would be devastated. All of my correspondence, many of my contacts are on there. So I would lose track of my many friends, of many work colleagues, and so on. But you might think, well, you know, that's not going to happen, right? It's going to be around for a while. But just a few weeks ago, a National Geographic reporter named Rachel Bale, she was writing an article in Google Docs, just writing, talking about wildlife crimes. And suddenly, her account got frozen out. Poosh, there was a notice from Google that says, you have violated our terms of service. And she got cut out of her digital life on Google. So she started digging around and she complained, and turns out others had that problem too. And Google then fixed things, and they said, oh, we had a glitch. We did a push to the code, and it accidentally filtered out people who we thought were violating the terms of service, but we fixed that. So those of you doing wildlife crime, writing about that, that's okay. But if you think about it, they're still cutting people out. They're cutting people out when they write about things. Imagine you're doing an essay about Al-Qaeda. Shoom, gone. And all of that. They are surveilling us. And of course, it's not just Google. Do you remember Snowden, the Snowden revelations with PRISM and all that 5 years ago? Those revelations did not stop the US government program to monitor us. In that program, Microsoft has been sending their data to the US government for more than 10 years, Google for 5 years, Facebook, Yahoo, all the rest, right? And it's happening all the time. And we can keep going with example after example. So overall, you can see that we are in a data crisis. It is really very dangerous. There is new headlines every day. Just this past week, for example, net neutrality got turned off in the USA. And we should be worried. Why? Well, if you think about what it is to be a citizen of a democracy, the very, very core thing you need is to protest, is to write about issues that you see about the government, to organize, and to stand up, to call people out. But if you start typing an essay that has any hint of terrorism or otherwise, or even just complaints about the government, whoosh, your account could be off and you are cut out. You are exiled from your digital accounts. Are you angry? I am. I'm amazing. It's just, I don't even have words. But the amazing thing is, we can do something about it. So what can we do about it? Well, first of all, let's just take a breath. Just breathe. So, and you know, look at some pretty jellyfish. If you think about it, by the way, as a quick aside, if AI were an animal, what would it be? And I've come to realize that it probably would be jellyfish. They kind of look like space aliens, kind of look like you know, AIs, right? And that takes me, actually, into my next topic. What we're trying to do is understand what's going on at the core. What led us to this data crisis where we are being watched, we are having our freedom, our democracy threatened? So I have to start with a story here. In 1997, I had my very first job, paying job. I grew up on a farm, so I had many hours of unpaid work. But in 1997, I had been hacking an AI for years and years, and I finally got paid to do artificial intelligence, AI. And my job, I was given a data set of 20,000 data points, and I had to build a classifier, an algorithm that could detect between birds chirping, people walking, clouds floating through the sky. They make a sound, not very much, and tanks and so on. And so I wrote some very, very basic algorithms at the beginning of that job. I had 45% error. That meant half the time it was failing. And after 4 months of toil with genetic algorithms and neural networks and all this, I got it down to 25% error. I was proud of myself. Of course, it was still unusable because 1 in 4 failures is pretty terrible. But it was a start. You know, it was my first job. And you might think, that's kind of interesting, right? 4 months to improve error by 20%. And that was actually the standard back in the 90s. That's how you did AI. But things changed. In the early 2000s, people realized that if you add more data, then you get lower error. 10x more data, 100x, 1,000x, 10,000x. So you actually have mountains and mountains and mountains of data. So instead of having genius PhDs to improve your model, you have CSVs. The CSV files are replacing the PhDs. And this actually led to a great reduction in the error, and that's why we started to see the deployment of more and more AI throughout the 2000s. But it didn't stop there. What happened was you had the Googles, the Facebooks of the world, realize that if they hoard that data to themselves, if they keep it to themselves, then they get a data network effect. They have more data, which means better models, which means higher click-through rate, which means more money. So they call themselves AI companies, but really, they're data companies. The AI part is just a head fake, because we could think AI is cool. But really, it's data, and they are data silos. That's what's going on. And what this has led to, of course, is, well, once you have silos of data, your data, then those companies can yank you away from those silos, and you get cut off. You get cut out of your digital life. Once again, this is threatening our democracy and our freedom. Now that we understand what's going on, the fact that AI has actually catalyzed these data silos, what can we do about it? What if we can actually democratize data? What if we actually give power back to the people, power over our data? Imagine that you have a data commons where all of the data that is open, that should be open and free to use, is open and free to use. And with your personal data, you control it. It's not in some silo of some billion-dollar organization halfway around the world. Instead, you are controlling it, and you are giving permission to those who you see fit, and revoking permission whenever you want. This is a new deal for data, leading to a new economy. What might this look like? How can we do this? Well, what we want to do is address two things. We want to address the siloed data part and the economic incentive to share. If we address both of those, then that is what can lead us to the solution. Let's talk about the siloed data. So out there, I talked about this handful of big corporations, the Facebooks and Googles of the world, who have both tons of data and tons of AI expertise. It turns out that most other organizations, small and large, don't have that. They either have tons of data. This is the big enterprises that are out there, the Fortune 500 guys. They have just lots and lots of data sitting there latent. They want to turn that data into value using AI, but it's really, really hard to hire AI people now. You have to spend a lot of money. It's $2 million signing bonuses if you just graduate with a grad degree in AI. So what's happening is these AI people, they're actually starting their own companies. There's tons and tons of AI startups out there. And the thing is, they want to play with algorithms, but they need data. They're starving for data. So we have, on one side, a lot of data sitting around. On the other side, a lot of AI expertise needing data. Let's connect them. And that's basically what we're doing with a project called Ocean. This is a project that myself and my colleagues are working on, and I will get more into it about how it's a blockchain and so on. But the overall project is Ocean, and the goal here is to fill the ocean with data. The ocean is, for the public, a public utility network. And by filling this ocean, what that means is we can flood out the silos, render them irrelevant. So once we have connected these enterprises with these startups, in order for them to talk to each other, we need data marketplaces. And not just one data marketplace, because that would be centralized. We would have new silos. Instead, we need 10, 100, 1,000 marketplaces. And of course, if each marketplace has its own data sets, then that would be very low liquidity, and we'd once again have problems. So overall, what we really need is a substrate that all of these marketplaces tap into. It's a lot like Kayak or Expedia or Hipmunk, where they're all tapping into the same database for travel data. Here, we want to do the same thing, this shared global database powering marketplaces for data itself. So I've talked about the siloed data, what we can do to connect these latent needs. Now let's talk about economic incentives, which brings us to blockchain and Bitcoin. So nearly 10 years ago now, this network's released called Bitcoin. At first, just a few cypherpunks were playing around with it, but bit by bit, it grew and grew and grew. It's now a $100 billion ecosystem. The amazing thing about Bitcoin is that no one owns or controls it. It's just out there. You own it a little bit, I own a bit, all of us do if we're just running a node. What is it for? It's a store of value like eCash or eGold, no more, no less. So that was basically this whole new idea, and it basically cracked open this idea of decentralization. But we didn't stop with just Bitcoin. The people who were playing with Bitcoin, including myself, many, many years ago, started asking ourselves, what more can we do besides just digital cash or digital gold? So starting in about 2013, many people really started working on this, including myself, on this idea of blockchains. And a blockchain basically is the thing that powers Bitcoin, but it can be used for so many more things. Think of blockchain like Google Sheets without the Google. So it's this giant, giant list of transactions about who has done, sent money to whom, or sent tokens to whom. And the amazing thing is, with blockchains, like I said, no one owns or controls it, but you can treat these as utilities. Just like the water works, just like the sky and the soil and nature, this is actually a public utility that's just out there for everyone to use. But they have a very special superpower, and that is, you can get people to do stuff. How? You reward them with tokens. So in the case of Bitcoin, what that means is Bitcoin defines security as compute power, and Bitcoin is trying to maximize its security. How does it do that? Well, every 10 minutes, it gives 12.5 Bitcoins to someone who has gobs of compute power. What you see here is a giant ASIC farm of chips running, mining Bitcoin. There are dozens, hundreds of these throughout the world of various folks, and what are they doing? They're all trying to win that digital gold. And the amazing thing is, every single one of them is adding to Bitcoin's security. Bitcoin's incentive system has been set up so that people build things like this, and mining pools and so on. There's a whole ecosystem around this. Well, we don't have to do this just with Bitcoin. We can design our own systems, asking, what do we want people to do? Well, with Ocean, what we're trying to do is maximize the supply of high-quality data. How do we do that? Well, we reward people for it with tokens, Ocean tokens. So we reward people for supplying data and curating it. It's as simple as that. So you can run a node, and you have data, and if you say this is good, if you put your money where your mouth is with the curation, then you can get some tokens. So overall, I've talked about the two issues, the siloed data and the economic incentives, and what we can do about that, building the system we're calling Ocean. Here's some of the benefits that it brings. First of all, self-driving cars. Every year in USA alone, more than 1 million people die from automotive deaths. Most of this is due to driver error. But with self-driving cars, it's possible to have the error, the accident rate, radically lower than the human accident rate. The algorithms are already there, but the only thing holding us back is the amount of data. We need 1 trillion miles driven. And right now, Toyota Research and Volkswagen and all these folks, they have nowhere near that amount. But if they pool their data together, they can start to get there. So we're working with Toyota to do this, to build a shared data exchange using Ocean of all the automotive data in the world. And Toyota is collaborating with many other big automakers to do this. This will get us self-driving car technology sooner, for fewer accidents, and fewer lost lives. Another one is there's data silos, all the hospitals. My daughter Tova, she's 3, she was born here in Germany, and when she was born in one hospital, and a few weeks ago, I had to take her to the doctor, emergency, she was coughing and stuff, had bronchitis. Anyway, it was midnight, and I went to the hospital, and they wanted to know her whole medical history. Well, I was super tired, and I was trying to remember, but I really had trouble. But what if I could just give them permission to use Tova's data from the past, where it's just accessed from data that I control? This is, and we can do this not just for my daughter, but what if we share our health data with permission to the scientists of the world so that we can have better data sets, bigger data sets for better models for things like cancer, early cancer detection. And finally, of course, the biggest benefit of all is flooding the data silos with this shared ocean of data to regain control over data towards our own democracy again. So to conclude, AI has catalyzed the rise of the data silos, and that has led us to a data crisis. Democracy and freedom itself are at our stake. But we can do something about this. We can build and fill an ocean of data. We can create a new economy of data, giving power back to the people. Thank you.